Hi there. You are listening to the Perio Patient Podcast, a podcast for my patients and anyone else who cares to listen. Dr. Ben Young here, and I am a periodontist in private practice in the beautiful city of San Antonio in the great state of Texas. The title of this podcast is Board Certification. On the American Academy of Periodontology website, it says, quote, all periodontists must complete an additional 2 to 3 years of specialized training in periodontics following dental school. That's what a periodontist, that's the training of a periodontist. But let me stop and say that I don't know of any of the residencies today that are 2 years. Now, I could be wrong, but the additional year became necessary a number of years back as our specialty began to further concentrate more on the surgical aspects of dental implants. And when I was trained back in 1985 to 88, that's 3 years, we were at the front end of learning about dental implants. That's about when the whole new dental implant exploded onto the North American continent from Europe, right around that time. So we were taught how to place dental implants, and we are also focused on how to manage them should they develop problems later on, which incidentally was the topic of my last podcast, number 68. So back to this statement on the Academy website about board certification. First off, everyone has to have been through specialty training, and then it goes on to say, however, some periodontists opt to take the board certification examination, which is offered by the American Board of Periodontology once a year. So there are two groups. The overall specialty group for periodontists is in the United States is the American Academy of Periodontology, and the group that manages the board examinations is the American Board of Periodontology. So they're separate. All right. The point here is that board certification is optional. It comes following completion of training. And so reading on, board certification in periodontology denotes someone who has made significant achievements beyond the mandatory educational requirements of the specialty, including demonstrating a comprehensive mastery of all phases of periodontal disease and treatment, and in the placement of dental implants. Recertification is required every 6 years. I'll tell you what, when you're going through the residency, it is not uncommon to wonder why it's such a good idea to go through both the preparation required as well as the stress of the examination process, since it isn't mandatory. And for some, that is what they decide to do. So let me give you my personal take, which is that it's very personal. If you are going through an intense training program, but one in many throughout the world, would you not like to know that your training holds up, that your training is valid across the board, or even if your training has some deficiencies, to know what those might be? So up to the point of graduation from any residency, the residents have been trained and examined by the same people. The board certification program puts you in front of the top researchers, the top educators, and the top clinicians in the entire field of periodontics. I was examined by more than one textbook author, for example. Some of the people you meet are the people who wrote the most important articles that you read in school. Not only this, they are asking you the questions. Sure, it is intimidating, but it's also immensely satisfying to come away knowing that you can hold your own and that the information that was poured into you over 3 years was at least digested well enough by you by the time you took the examination that it came out in some logical form and that you grasp the basic subjects. And should you not pass the first time around, it's not the end of the world. That is something also very valuable to appreciate and understand. Now, I was fortunate enough to pass the first time, but can completely understand how things can go wrong when taking both the written portion of the examination or taking the oral examination. You can just become shell-shocked. Now, I no longer keep up with the current requirements for submitting cases, taking the examinations today, and all the rest. And in fact, the board has sent me a nice reminder of my age recently with a certificate for having been a boarded periodontist now for over 25 years. But even though it is no longer a concern of mine to pass this board, I do remember clearly the nervousness I felt. Again, this passes as is true with life in general. Even if we fail at something, it is usually not the end of the world. All right, I can think of some instances where if you don't pass something, it could be the end of the world. But taking an examination like this one, simply in the bigger picture of things, doesn't qualify. Let me finally say, as we end here, that the reexamination process, it mentioned that every 6 years, is frankly very useful. I actually do look forward to taking it. It requires reading a current set of articles, and you cannot keep up on every article being published today and maintain a practice and maintain a life outside of periodontics. So it's nice when you get a reading list and you get to read through the reading list. And then essentially the test is an open book examination. In other words, the intent is not to pass or fail people. It is to help us review and in some instances come up to date with newer concepts and material that we may not have seen. It's all good, in my opinion. Ultimately, it helps our patients obtain the best care available, and that is why it is a good idea for specialists to seek and obtain board certification, if at all possible. Well, that's what I have for you today, except to encourage you to go back and check out my website. It's been updated with podcasts accessible more by topics. If you, for example, click on a tab on the front page of the website like finances, you're going to find my podcasts about dental insurance, for example. So go see what I mean. I think it might be a good resource not only for you to review things if you want to, but also to pass this information on to others. This has been the Perio Patient Podcast. I am still Dr. Ben Young. Thanks for listening. If you have questions or comments, please place them below this particular episode and they will get to me. Have a great day. Bye for now.